Hi, I'm Celeste, and welcome to Barb's Kitchen Classroom. Today we're going to make a fruitcake, and it's going to be a light almond and orange fruitcake. You can make a light fruitcake or a dark fruitcake. A dark fruitcake is a fruitcake that's made with molasses and strawberry jam and all kinds of yummy dark things like that. But my preference is a light fruitcake. So, first of all, we're going to start with a pan. This is not a traditional fruitcake pan. This is a bundt style pan with scallops on the top. I like it because it's a little more interesting on the table. I can add something decorative in the middle when I'm done. And it's not your traditional square loaf. So you can surprise people when you give them the gift of fruitcake. I also will not line this with paper like is traditionally asked for in recipes for fruitcake. If you're using brown paper, which a lot of older recipes will ask for, be sure you're using new brown paper and not an old paper bag. Most paper bags are now made with recycled paper and you're not sure what's in them and they're really not food safe. A better choice would be parchment paper or butcher's paper to line your pans with if that's what you're going to do. So, to start with, we're going to grease the pan, and I'm going to use Vegeline. Vegeline is a commercial pan spray that we sell here in the store. Once you have your pan sprayed, the next step is to mix all of your fruits together and dredge them with flour. The reason you want to dredge them with flour is so when you mix them into your batter, they don't all immediately sink to the bottom of your cake. So the first thing we're starting with is 3 cups of mixed and candied fruit. Next, I'll add 2 cups of light or golden raisins. So a light raisin would be a sultana or just simply called a golden raisin. The next thing we add after that is candied chopped pineapple. I have the green pineapple today, which is what we can get this year. Often it comes in red as well, and hopefully we'll see that very soon, although we haven't been able to get it yet. After that, I will add my almonds, citron peel, and we will have a list of the amounts and ingredients at the end of the video, as well as my cherries. So you have lots of pretty Christmas colors in here, and lots of ooey gooey candied fruit. Maybe should have chosen a slightly larger bowl, but that's okay. So then we add a half a cup of the flour, and we mix it all together so that it is fairly evenly distributed throughout the mix. It's really quite amazing how much fruit and nuts you put into a fruit cake and how very little batter there actually is to make it a cake. So you'll see when we put the batter together that really it's only about 3 cups of batter for all of this fruit. But it makes a lovely, lovely cake. Now we're going to want to put together our dry ingredients so that it's all nicely mixed and evenly mixed when we put it into the wet ingredients. So we're going to start off with the remainder of our flour. Pour it into a slightly larger bowl. And a bowl that will pour a little easier, as well as 2 teaspoons of baking powder. I like these handy measuring spoons. You can adjust the size of them, so you can go as small as 1/8 of a teaspoon or as large as an entire teaspoon. And next we'll add just a half a teaspoon of salt. Because this is a dry ingredient, I can just tap it off and it's clean. I can change my measurement to a half a teaspoon and put it in. I'll just stir this together so that it's evenly mixed and just double check to make sure there's no big lumps in my flour. And now we're ready to move on to creaming our wet ingredients. So our wet ingredients include our butter. So we will need a half a cup. If you've cut off the piece that tells you how many cups you have of butter in your stick, we have this handy dandy butter ruler. So I can measure and know that this is precisely 1 cup of butter. Today I'm using just regular unsalted butter. If all you have is salted butter, then don't put the salt in your flour, because there's enough salt in butter that in salted butter that you don't need to do that. And even though this is very soft, I like to cut it up again so that it's sort of evenly dispersed throughout the bowl, and it just makes it a little easier, especially when you start adding the sugar and you want it to cream nicely, if there's a little bit all over the place. I will put my whisks in the bowl. And I will just turn it on to start creaming the butter, and then I will grab my sugar and I'll slowly add my sugar. This would be 1 cup of sugar. I'm going to turn it up just a little bit. Now that we have the butter creamed, we're going to add the eggs one at a time. I like to crack them in a bowl, not directly into the mixture, just in case every once in a while you get a bad one. Okay, I'll turn my mixer back on. The last thing I'm going to do before I add my dry ingredients is to grate a little orange rind in for some extra flavor. You can use something a little larger than a rasp if you want and have larger pieces of rind in it. You can have curl, just as long as you have the orange zest in there in some fashion. It'll add a lot of extra orange flavor to your fruitcake. And nothing says Christmas like a little bit of orange. Unless you're my friend Tony, and then Christmas is said with ginger. But either way. And that's also the nice thing about fruitcake. Whatever says Christmas to you are the spices you can add. If you wanted to add a little anise, a little fennel, a little cinnamon, you could add all of that. And it would still turn out fine and taste lovely. I'm also going to add just a wee bit of orange oil that wasn't in the original recipe, but it's always nice to add something that makes it uniquely yours. And I like to make sure, for sure, that you're going to taste orange in this. I'm also going to add a little almond extract, because the nuts have a lot of texture, but they don't really have a ton of taste in something baked, so adding the almond extract will give it that extra almond kick. Now I'm just going to put the lid on quickly and mix it up just a little bit before I add the dry ingredients. There we go. I will switch to the dough hook because this is going to get really stiff and I don't want to wreck my wire whisks. Well, I found my dough hook, so I'll just put my dough hook in. I will add about half of my flour mixture. I just want to mix that till it gets a little wet. And then I'm going to add my secret ingredient, orange liqueur. You can use any of the orange liqueurs. This happens to be one I brought back from a winery in PEI. I highly recommend it. It says about a half a cup. Looks like about a half a cup to me. And again, mix that up just a wee bit. Add the rest of my dry ingredients. Take my spatula, run it around the bowl, and then I will grab my fruit and nuts and I will add it to this very tiny bit of batter. So this is a very little bit of batter, and we're going to put all of this fruit into this very little bit of batter to make our light fruit cake. This recipe actually came in from a staff member. So next time you come into the store, you'll have to ask Merle if my fruitcake is as good as her fruitcake. All right, so we've got, I'll give it one more spin. And then I will start adding fruit. Now that we have all of our fruit and nuts mixed into here, I will take out my dough hook. And do make sure you use a dough hook or something that's meant to mix dough if you're using your mixer to mix all of this up. Because if you use your cookie paddles or wire whips, you will ruin them. It's just too heavy. Leave this on the counter. And now, if you want to, you could fill the top of this with blanched almonds and it would give it a different presentation. But I think this time I am just going to put my cake batter into the pan. And actually, I am going to get a spoon, or I'll use my measuring cup because that works way better to plop it into the pan than trying to scoop it in with a spatula. As you can see, it is truly more fruit and nuts than batter, and that's why fruit cakes get a reputation as being heavy and dense. They are actually a wonderful thing to have if you're hiking, because they have a lot of sugar and a lot of fruit and a lot of protein from the nuts in them. This is going to wind up being way too much batter for my bowl here. So I am going to show you a trick that my mother used to do when she would make fruitcakes. Because at Christmas time, there's lots of things to make, steamed puddings and fruitcakes, and steamed puddings have a lot in common with fruitcakes. So what she would do is she would take a bowl like this and grease it the same way I greased the pan. Take some of her fruitcake batter and plop it into the bowl. And she would bake it right alongside her fruitcake. Then come Christmas dinner, when we all wanted to have our Christmas pudding, she would plop these out of the bowls, pour rum sauce over them, and we all thought we were eating steamed pudding. Lo and behold, it was Mom's Christmas cake. It was really funny for people who said they disliked Christmas cake, but they really always enjoyed my mother's Christmas pudding. They never ever knew they were eating the same thing. Awesome. So once we get this sort of smoothed around, we will plop it into an oven that has been preheated to 250 degrees. And when you're making this, you'll have to have a pan of water. So you just take a regular baking pan, fill it up halfway with water, put it underneath your baking rack so that you have a lot of steam in your oven to make sure the cake stays moist. You can see the pan of water in the oven. It's best to start with hot or boiling water in there so the steam starts right away. Just put my cakes in the oven. Of course, the little ones are going to cook much quicker than the big one. And they'll take anywhere from 2 to 2.5, maybe even 3 hours to cook the big one. So after 2.5 or 3 hours, you let your cake sit on the counter until it's fairly cool. You don't want to pop it out too soon, or you could crack it or break it. You can see the little pudding here. I'm just going to run a knife around the outside edge so that it pops out of the bowl nice. Come on, baby. There we go. Whoop! Okay, I didn't run it all the way around, so of course it's going to make a liar out of me. The one I popped out this afternoon looked beautiful. Little rum sauce over that. No one is going to notice. So you can take a little donut sugar, sprinkle the top, add some orange rind to the top, a few pieces of holly, and you have a beautiful Christmas cake. Thanks for joining me for this video. I wanted to let everybody know that all of the ingredients we used in this cake, except of course for the liqueur, were from our store. We like to have fresh ingredients ready for people to come in and bake till their heart's content. Almost everyone who works here is a cook themselves, so if you have any questions, don't ever hesitate to ask one of our staff to help you out. Thanks for joining me.